All right, what's up, everybody? Tain Nix here, back again at the Expat Files. Today I have James Guzman with me. James is the guy who helped me set up something that everybody going expat should think about, which is worldwide medical insurance. I'm very, very happy that I chose to do this. This is, in my mind, and for various reasons that we're going to actually explore, and I'm going to tell you a story also about my own experience, is actually a better deal than the kind of medical coverage that you get inside, say, the US or Canada. This is a hilarious, actually, topic. Somebody yesterday, I was discussing this, and somebody from Canada, of course, put in the comments section on a video I was doing about how, yeah, but Canadian healthcare is free, which is always one of the funniest things you can hear people say, because of course it's not free. And in any case, there's a lot of misconceptions about getting medical coverage or medical care, getting taken care of outside North America. And most of the misconceptions are just dead wrong. And so it's good that we have an expert who can set the record straight a little bit. Again, I've had experience with this, and I can tell you, you'll be very, very pleased. If you do go abroad, this is something you need to know about. But today, I just want to welcome James. Welcome to the podcast. Very happy to have you here. I know you're a little bit under the weather, so thanks for being with us. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me. I'm glad to talk to you.
Excellent. Well, first of all, you're an interesting guy to me for several reasons, because not only what you chose to do as a career path, helping expats with medical coverage, but also because you are an expat and you have an interesting story about how you went abroad, how you got started sort of on your current path. And also you're a bit of a expert on Mexico. You're in one of my very favorite parts of Mexico, a place I really like to visit and enjoy going to. So why don't we begin there before we get into the medical care portion of today's podcast, which is the real reason that I wanted people to hear from you. But talk about your decision and sort of what led you to want to live outside the US, and how did you first start out on this path?
Oh, well, that's a long story. I'm not sure where to start. Yeah, I mean, my father was from Puerto Rico, where you are now. And so I used to spend summers in Puerto Rico with my grandmother. And so that's kind of how I grew up speaking English. I grew up in North Carolina. But yeah, so that was kind of how I guess, what you would call like a third culture kid. I don't know if people have heard of that term, but that's someone who's kind of, they're familiar with different cultures as they grow up. And they actually have a different psychological makeup. So anyways, that's kind of an interesting rabbit trail if people want to go down that. But so I was, comfortable with different. I learned Spanish. I was comfortable with different languages and that kind of thing. And then after that, I joined the Navy out of high school, and and that obviously we went all over. We were in Afghanistan, and all I did the Mediterranean, and so then I got to see some different places and that kind of thing. And that kind of gave me an international view as well. Once I got out, also in the Navy, I got into real estate. That was in the early mid 2000s. And I was in my early 20s. I bought my first house when I was 20 years old. And that's when when I got out, well, first of all, the real estate market crashed, and I had rental real estate in my early 20s because I was reading Robert Kiyosaki and people like that, and learning about rental real estate. And I didn't know that, I'd never lived through a market crash. And so that was a big wake up call for me. And I started to learn about, how the fiat money system works and what creates bubbles. And I went really deep into fiat currency and economics. And I studied. I used my GI Bill, and I went to Madrid, Spain, and I studied international business there. There's also a professor there called Jesus Huerta de Soto, who is a pretty famous economist within Austrian economic circles. He's one of the only students of Rothbard, other than Hans Hermann Hoppe. And so anyway, so I studied with him and all his PhD professors and stuff like that. One of his students was my professor. His name's David Howden. And we became very good friends. And I got really into all this, especially during the European debt crisis. And to be honest with you, I thought everything was going to fall apart a long time ago. Back then, I was studying it, and I said, well, this is just too much debt. This first 2008, and then the European debt crisis. And Not sure what happened, but it all just kind of got pushed off, and they've continued to kick the can down the road. It's been pretty amazing. And then my first job, once I graduated college, my first job was actually with Peter Schiff. I helped start his the Euro Pacific Bank. I was one of the first brokers, the one that recently had to get shut down. I don't know if people know that story, but the Australian media came after him with a bunch of bogus charges, and even though it was all fraudulent, what they were saying, he still ended up having to close down the bank because it took such a hit, just in the eyes of people. But anyways, I was one of the first brokers there. That was in Barbados and St. Vincent, and then I kind of felt restricted. It's a very hard gig being just a broker like that, especially doing only cold calls. And so, anyways, yeah, it's kind of funny, just real quick. It was me and three other guys, and we were in Barbados, and all we would do is we just sit on the phone or online and just make calls, cold calls, all of them. They just gave them a bunch of calls. And then on our time off, we just go run and exercise and go run, swim in the beach and stuff like that. And St. Vincent it has like really shoddy internet. So a lot of times the internet would go out and say, all right, well, go to the beach, right? A beautiful place, but I didn't really it wasn't up my alley as far as living there. The West Indies, it's like, it's okay. And it's got beautiful landscape and all that type of stuff. But as far as the food and the culture and all this type of stuff, I'm just more into Latin America. This is more up my alley. So, I had an opportunity to go to Acapulco and, help as far as writing newsletter and selling condominiums and stuff there. So I moved to Acapulco, and again, it was like this was late 20s, stuff like that. So I was like a single guy, late 20s in Acapulco, and it was just like a blast. I had a condo on the beach, and was just really into the whole thing of financial independence and living internationally and all that. And I got into that, but it just got to be pretty crazy for me. And as I got older, I just didn't think it was a good place for me to be establishing myself. And so I moved to San Miguel de Allende in Guanajuato, central Mexico. And I first started here just doing real estate sales. I still kind of do real estate, but yeah, the real estate sales. I used to have a vacation rental company, but with COVID and some other things, I ended up having to close it down, unfortunately. So now I concentrate on insurance, which a lot of people don't do. And yeah, it's one of the well, just as far as where I am, San Miguel, I found it to be great. It's the opposite of Acapulco. It's kind of it's great weather. I mean, the most perfect weather I've found. Yeah, and high altitude, doesn't get too humid. Colonial, kind of laid back. It's one of the most more conservative places in Mexico. If people look like socially conservative. And I just thought it to be very interesting, beautiful architecture and all that type of stuff. And as far as insurance goes, it's just something that a lot of people neglect when they talk about, moving overseas. You can save money on taxes. You can live in a great quality of life in a less expensive place, and a peace of mind and all these different types of things, more medical freedom, more educational freedom for your kids. But also you can save a lot of money on insurance, and people don't realize, I mean, it's in most of Latin America, you can have a completely private medical experience, private insurance. And it really is, a lot of people say, oh, I was talking to Michael Strong. A lot of people know him. He is really into like educational freedom. He has been for a while, and private free cities and stuff like that. I was talking to him a couple of days ago because he's like, well, in a private market, this could happen and that can happen. It's not theoretical. There actually exists a private market. So yeah, we could talk about what actually happens in that private market. And so anyways, a lot of times I think a lot of people, they get really caught up in these theoretical things, but there's actually ways that you can live whatever it is that you're thinking that might exist. You can live it today, but it exists internationally.
It's really true. And obviously you've had an enormous range of life experience, but also tremendous business experience. And what I'm saying is absolutely my experience too, which is this and you don't have to be a young single guy, right? With no responsibilities, to really take advantage of just the awesome adventure out there. I mean, one of the things that has, and I knew this while it was happening to me at the time, but when I I was gone from the United States more or less, right, for about 15 years on and off to mostly Latin America. And, you know, reconnecting with old friends from high school, university, the thing that you get, the thing that I hear over and over again, which is very flattering, but which I'm aware of is, wow, you know, I wish I had gone and done something adventurous with my life. I mean, it really is true. A friend of mine who's an attorney in New York, very successful, tremendous career, but, you know, aware that, you know, also like some portion of life passed these people by. And so I'm always flattered when I hear it, but it is true that you can really design just a tremendous adventure. This is something that very few people think about. Caught up in the day today. Obviously, you have to have a job that allows you to go do some of the stuff that we do. And if you don't have that, and you have to, you know, you're physically chained to one location, that's different. But with the remote work thing that happened, especially that accelerated through the lockdowns and the early 2020s, a lot of things are possible now. But let's get into this. I mean, you have a fascinating story about how you first started out. And I want to hear more about how and why you relocated to Mexico, because I know you're a bit of an expert on that. But I do want to talk to people about the sort of main theme here today, which is this issue of insurance, which is a great business to be in. But you mentioned that for a lot of people, they overlook it. I want to bring up two things. First of all, the necessity of it, but also the simple fact that you can have the best medical coverage, probably superior to anything that you're getting inside the United States. I know from personal experience that, you know, our experience in Mexico, where my son was born, was mind-blowing, right? Not just in terms of cost savings, but also the very conspicuous lack of aggravation, right, that you always get dealing with the United States medical system. And so, talk about your experiences. What do you see? What do you hear from people? Like, what about, you know, your own, either your own personal experience or from dealing with clients? What do people tell you? You know, what are some horror stories of people who really got this part wrong and need to understand that, you know, not only is there such a thing as global insurance, but also that, right, once you have it, you can design a really very high quality, private, hassle-free kind of medical care pretty much everywhere you go.
Yeah, so I guess to start with that, there's a lot there. So to start with that, I would say that a lot of people, number one, like I said, they're under the impression that there isn't kind of a more private insurance, especially people in the United States or Canada. They just know what they know in their own country, and so they don't know that this, you know, this already exists. That there is medical freedom and there's a way that you can cover yourself and all that kind of stuff. So. What I wanted to say is that a lot of people also, when they get past that, they thought, okay, well, maybe I can go overseas. They see how inexpensive it is, maybe in Mexico. I'll use Mexico because I'm in Mexico, and that's kind of what you know, expertise is on at the moment. So, you know, people come and maybe they get stitches or they'll get their teeth cleaned or they'll do something like that, and they say, well, it's very cheap here. I can just pay for everything out of pocket. And I think that's, you know, that's where people kind of overlook it. And I know that's easy to do, especially when you're young. I mean, I actually did it, you know, for a long time. I was just like, well, I didn't know anything about that. I didn't plan ahead and all that kind of stuff. But the thing is that so in Mexico, you have private and you have public options. Okay, so if somebody, you know, well, first of all, I would say that the reason that you come down to Latin America or something like that is because you have some sort of online income and all that type of stuff, and it can go a lot farther down here, and you know, you could live a good level of life around here, right? So you don't want to come down here and then use the public services, right? So I would not, you know, recommend just coming down here and then you know, like, oh, just, well, if anything happens, I'm just going to go to a public hospital. You know, first of all, I mean, that's not the public population. You know, the public doesn't appreciate that. A bunch of expats coming down and then just, you know, want to use public services. And, you know, second of all, it's just not going to work out well for you. You know, I did when I was in Acapulco, I did have a moped, and I wrecked it, and I had like internal bleeding and all this type of stuff, and I had to go to the public hospitals, and it was, I mean, it's like a MASH unit. That's what we compare it to. It's like a MASH unit. I mean, there was probably 15 to 20 other people in there, and they really don't do anything for you. I mean, they don't have any resources. A lot of times they don't even have any aspirin or anything like that. Or you have to have people
Wow.
that can come in and, oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it depends on where, different public hospitals, some are more, have more resources than other, but for the most part, it's very, very, underfunded. That's the reason it's been a big problem with AMLO. He's been trying to do different things. They have a new thing called Insabi, where they're trying to mix all these different uh, services, public services together, and trying to basically fix this problem that they have because it's very
It's a safety
underfunded.
net. Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
safety net.
right.
It's the same in other Latin American countries, as far as I can tell. I mean, they have a
Yeah,
basic safety net, depending on level of resources and where you are in the country. You know, if you're in Buenos Aires in Argentina and you go to a public health clinic, well, they might have aspirin. You know, they might have something. But by and
yeah,
large, right, in Latin America especially, which is your expertise and mine,
yeah.
you do not want to be going to public health, like
No,
period, right?
right.
You make,
Yeah,
yeah,
I'd agree. Yeah, you're better off just, I mean, and if you do need a stitch or something, just pay for it.
yeah.
That's it. So yeah, I would say I would just recommend not going to the public hospital at all ever, really. I mean, long waits. You probably get sicker in there,
Get a
because
nice infection while you're there. Yeah, right.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. So,
Yeah.
and the thing is that private care is great, like you said, and it's it is inexpensive, compared to the U.S. for sure, compared to other places. I mean, yeah, depending on what you want to do. Now, what I was going to say, what I'm building up to, is that that doesn't mean that everything is insanely cheap. So, yes, regular checkups, dental cleanings, stitches, things like that, you can pay for out of pocket, no problem. But there are times when, so you mentioned births. Births is one of the big things, and I can go over that in a minute. But accidents, if you develop something, some sort of a condition, if you have to go to a specialist and you need, some sort of surgeries, spinal surgery, brain surgery, but different types of things. Another thing is cancer. Cancer. I mean, people have different opinions about cancer, but cancer is obviously probably the top thing that insurance claims pay out is cancer treatments. So there are different things that can develop that can become very, very expensive. And so the risk reward ratio is like, what are you paying to keep yourself from a very expensive downside incident or condition. And so, I mean, this is how insurance works. And I think a lot of people have forgotten because of all the government interference, how insurance is supposed to work. It's just like with a car. You don't buy a car to cover all your, oil changes and to fix your tires and all that type of stuff. Car insurance is when, you wreck your car. Okay. And so it's the same thing, house insurance is for when your house burns down or something, bad happens like that. And so it's not just for your little things here and there. That's how insurance is supposed to work. And so, it all wealthy people hold insurance, and that's because they know that the risk reward ratio is you pay a certain amount and you don't have that very, very big down risk of being wiped out. That's how people become wealthy, is that they just continue on, with their income, their investments and dividends, their things like that. And they know that there's not just going to be some unforeseen thing that's going to wipe out their entire portfolio. Right. And so that's why you have insurance. And so that's one thing. It's just unforeseen circumstances as far as um accidents and conditions. And there's a lot of different things. I mean, I could go into all of them, but there's just so many. I get
Well, you did an awesome video that I'm going to play for
yeah,
folks because it does cover a lot of the information, what you talked about, the difference between public and private. And you're talking about Mexico in the video, just like you
yeah,
mentioned here, because that's your expertise. But this
right.
is the case pretty much throughout every Latin American country. Probably not that different in most other parts of the world too. There's a tremendous jump from the public safety net care to the private care that you could get. Again, for people who aren't used to this, talk for a second, because I know a lot of people will have taken a cruise or, done some kind of trip and maybe used, American Express trip insurance, to cover medical emergencies and things like this. Why is that a bad idea, or why is that not sufficient? What is the danger there? I know you talked about underwriting in the video, but I am going to play that video so people can get good
Okay.
information there. But what's the difference? Like, I want to impress upon people watching this. It's like getting global insurance is no big deal. It's a really easy thing to do. It's very cost effective. And if you're
Yeah.
going to be on the road, or if you have to be outside of your home country, it makes infinite sense to do this.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So first I want to say, maybe if people are listening to this as a podcast and not watching it, in that video, the graph that I show with the top claims for one of the companies I work with, they, I mean, it goes from $1.4 million, $1 million. I know people like, what? I show that to a lot of people and they're like, $1 million for, you know, for a claim, a 1 yearly claim. Like, yeah, I mean that, okay, that's an extreme example. And those are the highest per year for that. I think, and I believe that charge for 2022. So each year it goes up. But I also wanted to point out that that's not only Mexico in that video. That's those are all Latin American countries. So you'll notice a lot of different countries on there. So as far as that, yeah. So you have what's called travel insurance, and you have long-term insurance. Travel insurance is normally a year or less, usually 6 months or less when you're on a cruise or something like that. That's basically to cover emergencies. So that's when people have long-term insurance somewhere, whether it's from a government or not, whatever, they have some sort of long-term coverage somewhere, and then they're going outside of that area. Then you want to get to, you know, travel insurance or short-term insurance. And the difference is that with long-term insurance, once you buy it, you do a checkup, and they have what's called underwriting. You don't really have to have a checkup if you're over a certain age. You need a checkup, or if they see things on your application that they want more details on, then they'll ask for a checkup. But you will pass medical question, we'll say. Okay. And so, you know, you're supposed to be honest there, right? And if you're not, then they can just deny your coverage completely. But you have to go through what's called underwriting, where they ask you some questions about your medical history. And then once you're past that, then they say, okay, full coverage, nothing is excluded. As long as you continue to pay that premium for the rest of your life, then you are covered for everything. Okay. So say you develop cancer, you develop a brain problem, you develop whatever, something very expensive. They have to pay for it. As long as you pay that premium for the rest of your life, they have to cover it. Okay, so that's the big deal, and that's what the problem is, that people lose their insurance, and then if say that you do have something that has a very expensive prescription drug ongoing, or you need physical therapy going forward, or you need something that's very expensive. If you stop paying for your insurance, then you can for a lot of, well, there are some places that you can get insurance, but for the most part, for anything that's going to be affordable, you're not going to be able to get insured again. For the ones that you can get, like they have
Ones that becomes a pre-existing condition at that point.
Correct. Yeah. So then you have pre-existing condition, which you can, it's going to make it either excludable or completely deniable. Yep. Now, the only people that are going to cover pre-existing conditions are going to be government plans, like perhaps, you know, like you mentioned in Canada, you can get back on the government plan or something, but you got to be in Canada and you got to depend on the government. And the other thing is they do have some policies that are based out of the U.S. because now, since the Affordable Care Act in the U.S., every insurance company that's ACA compliant has to cover pre-existing conditions. And so there's one company, GeoBlue, that will do it, but it's astronomically expensive. So it's, you know, it's going to be very, very expensive. But if you absolutely need to have coverage, they have to cover pre-existing conditions. But that's going to be just as much as any other U.S. Policy. So for the most part, like the non-ACA compliant international plans is going to be like a fifth or probably less. You know, it depends on which one you get, but it's going to be much, much, much less than what you're going to pay for something like that. And so, yeah, so travel insurance is not made to be lived on. It also doesn't have coverage for things like maternity, you know, other types of things that, like I said, if you develop something, if you need any type of surgery, that's all like outpatient stuff, which means like you have to schedule it. Travel insurance is not going to allow that. So travel insurance, basically emergencies, you know, if something happens, you get rushed to the hospital, they're going to cover you up to a certain limit, and then that's it. And so the whole point of that is that you have so what you want to do is you want to have, if you are traveling outside of your, whatever you do have coverage, you want to have travel insurance just to get you stable and back to wherever it is that you have other insurance.
Yep. Yes. And global insurance, like the kind that I purchased from you, for me and my family, does not work is not valid in North America as well. So this is global insurance is for people, trip insurance for short term. I'm going to take a trip to Uruguay or Mexico or whatever. Okay, I'm going to get trip insurance when I booked a ticket with my credit card, and American Express is going to cover me. Long-term global insurance, okay, that's it. I'm actually moving abroad. I'm moving outside the US or Canada, which is where most of the people watching this are going to be living. I'm picking up global insurance because I want access to the highest tier of private care that I can get in any of the countries that I'm going to go to. And, to share my own story again, we decided to have our birth in Mexico. We didn't put this on insurance. I'm just telling you the level of care here. It was El Faro is the name of the hospital in Mérida, and fantastic. I mean, the care was, it was strange because I kept finding myself waiting for the hassles when I had to talk to the people in billing. And obviously we were there for several weeks. We had 2 midwives looking after my wife. We actually had 2 surgeons, right, when we needed them for the delivery. The whole thing was white glove and just top high class, like private rooms, everything was taken care of. 4 nights in the hospital, which in the US is, average about $10,000 a night. I mean, it's an insane difference. The whole thing altogether was just over $4,000. And I can't say enough good about it. The level, I suppose maybe the only drawback is if you didn't speak good Spanish, it would have been a problem. It wasn't for me, but if you came to have a birth in Mexico, you would need somebody who could help with the translation of it. It's not like all doctors are going to be able to talk to you in English, although most of them can understand some. But I was amazed. I was just astonished. I know that there's great hospitals. I'm actually headed to Mexico City a little bit later, depending on when people watch this or when I actually post this podcast, to get a full executive checkup, the kind of thing that costs, between $5,000 and $20,000 in North America. Will run probably just about $1,000 US in either it's Medica Sur or the hospital, I forget what it's called, ABC or something like this. And so tremendous access to private care. You're not really waiting around, right? There's none of this 12-hour wait times. I had to go to emergency room here in Puerto Rico about 1.5 years ago, and it was a nightmare. I mean, it was a nightmare. You could easily die in the emergency room. There's just absolutely nothing like it. I feel like it's actually a higher level of care and a better lifestyle to have global medical coverage and live outside North America at this point. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. And let me add something in there that's very important that people don't know until it's too late. And that is, if you are going to live internationally or in Mexico or Latin America or something like that, it's a no-brainer. If you're going to have kids, if you're planning on having kids, it's a no-brainer to buy insurance because you're going to get the birth costs more than your premium. So if you buy the insurance 10 months, you have a 10-month waiting period, which means you can't buy insurance while she's pregnant, or you can't buy insurance and then she gets pregnant the next month. You have to wait 3 months, which I did. But yeah. So once you do that, then that birth is covered. Now, it's not only is the birth paid for. So like you said, yours was around $4,000. Your premium is probably going to be, I mean, it depends you have to buy insurance for your wife or your girlfriend. So it's going to be what, $1,000 or something like that a year, or $2,000. And then the birth costs $4,000. So you see, so you just made $3,000. All right. And not only that, but it covers complications for the baby for the first 90 days. And it covers complications for the mother. So I just had a baby a month ago, or I didn't have a baby. My wife had a baby, but she had some complications, so they had to actually do some extra stuff. And then the baby was dehydrated, and so we had to keep her in a room for another 3 or 4 days. And so yeah, it was a little bit longer than we proposed, but all that was covered, so everything was paid for. And that was a month ago. I've already gotten reimbursed for that. So I did pay. And by the way, I'll say another thing is that as an American, you have access to credit cards with credit card points. And another thing you could do is that if you, I mean, obviously it's pretty, when you're going to have a baby, right? And so before that happens, then you just, you can apply for one of these cards, a Sapphire card or something like that. It's going to give you a lot of points, and just put it on the credit card, do a reimbursement claim, pay off the credit card, and then you have a bunch of points. So you either made $1,500 or you can use that for travel and you made even more.
There you go.
So yeah, so it's really a no-brainer if you're young, planning on having uh, children or something like that. You're basically getting paid to have kids. So and it's a peace of mind, you know. And like you said, it really is. I mean, again, here in San Miguel is the same as you're talking about. We have big private room, 2 rooms, two separate rooms, our own bathroom, our own nurse, our own.
Yeah.
We choose our own team. We have
Yeah,
our own
even the
doctor.
hospital food was good. I'm not making it up. Like even the food in the hospital was like respectable. I mean, it
Yeah.
was shocking. It was shocking. And I mean,
Yeah, we brought in our own food, but yeah, they have food. They got a cafeteria, and all, but you can bring your own food in there. My son, when he was born, it was during the whole COVID stuff, and so we didn't. Nobody was wearing masks. Nobody checked. Nobody screwed with us. We had our own room. We did whatever we wanted in there. We had a doula, turned the lights down, put candles up, and scents, and we did whatever we wanted in there, and had our own team. And yeah, nobody bothered us
yeah,
about
private care. Yep, private care in a place like Mexico is private. I mean, it is
yeah.
really the highest tier. They do not mess with you. You're allowed to do what you please. It's on you. You get to call the shots. Nothing like that existed here in Puerto Rico. We had a friend who had twins during
Yeah.
lockdown, the same time my son was born, the same time your child was born, and it was a nightmare. You know, it was an absolute nightmare.
Yeah.
She told the story, and I just thought you should have left. You know, like it's too bad, but.
Well, let me just also say before we move on from that, also everything is completely up to you. So as far as circumcision, which vaccines you want, whatever you want to do, that's all up to you. Nobody's pressuring you to do anything.
Yep, that's right. That's exactly right. Yep. I noticed that and I appreciated the hell out of it too. You know, I don't know anybody living in the US at this stage who doesn't have some kind of horror story about, and you know, we were in Florida until 2020 was my most recent time living in the United States, and for a job that I had at the time. And you know, if I went for a medical checkup, there was always something. There was always something that they would hide. You ask, like, how much is this going to cost? What does this test cost? Right? You can never get a straight answer, and then 3 months later, 6 months later, you're seeing a bill for something that you were told wasn't going to be charged or that was covered by insurance. Nobody seems to know, right, what things are going to cost. My point is, this is the only industry on earth that I'm aware of that at least gets to pretend to legitimacy, that is allowed to sort of make up whatever charges and costs and not tell you things and sort of make things up as they go along. There's really nothing like the US medical system. And as we know, and as we knew long before the fiasco of the whole COVID lockdowns and everything else, and the way the medical system was, quite frankly, commandeered and in some ways weaponized against the population. The AMA, the American Medical Association, is probably the strongest, outside the military contractors, it's probably the strongest lobby on earth. And so these people are able to influence laws and to sort of stack the deck in their own favor. And so I just don't see anything good coming with the US medical system. I think it's going to get more and more prohibitively cost prohibitive, expensive. I think the care will continue to suffer and struggle. And we had fabulous insurance while we lived in Florida. My employer covered that stuff, but you were always dealing with some kind of headache that was going to surprise you, that you were going to get, sort of stuck with down the road. And I can't recall having a good experience in the US medical system, really as far back as I can remember. But right, thinking about my time in Latin America and using my insurance when I had to have it, and the birth and the various times. I don't go to the hospital a whole lot, but holy moly, I mean, the difference is really, really night and day. And some people are aware of medical tourism. Do you have anything to add really about medical tourism? I know we've sort of touched on it, but do you know people coming down like specifically for, you mentioned cancer treatments. I know there's centers in Mexico. Is there other stuff that people should be aware of in your neck of the woods about medical tourism?
Yeah, so I mean, medical tourism is outside the scope of insurance, because when people use medical insurance, it's because, I'm sorry, medical tourism, it's because their insurance is not covering whatever it is. So when people use medical tourism, they're, probably from the US or Canada or something, and something is either taking too long or it's not covered with their insurance. So they come down to Mexico and they pay out of pocket. There's a lot of things that you know, it depends on what exactly you want to
Like
get
what?
done. I mean, obviously, dental work is one of the things a lot of people do in Mexico. And you know, a lot of people think it's going to be some guy in a shack or something like that. Again, I think we've kind of stressed this. It's not like that. I mean, there's very like high quality of care, and people that are very trained and all that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, you just have to whatever it is that you want to have done. It's a specific thing, or plastic surgery or something, whatever. I know a lot of people come to Latin America for that. That's just going to be something out of pocket that you just have to do your own research. But I would say number one, just don't. It's not as scary as you might think, but do your research.
Yeah, aside from dental work, people come to, I know Thailand is a big one for cardiac surgery, right? If you need heart surgery, any kind of heart health, heart related treatments. Anything else that you're aware of in Mexico? No, no specific.
Something else comes to mind. I know a guy in Puerto Vallarta who's really done well, and that's for guys that want testosterone treatment.
Mm,
They can actually so that a lot of you can buy topical testosterone and other types of things over the counter. They really advertise it over in
yep.
like Nayarit area. If you go to any pharmaceutical, you'll just see all this crap, and you're like, holy shit, that's for
Yeah,
sale
no,
just
it's all available without a
over the
prescription.
counter.
Yeah.
And so he's figured out the way that you can come down and you go to a doctor that he hasn't, and they will prescribe you testosterone treatments, and then they sell it to you, put it in a box, and you can fly home with it, and it's
Yeah.
like 6 months to a year's
Yeah.
worth. So some people do that. I guess it's a lot cheaper, a lot easier. Again, I'd probably do my research as far as the certain mark or brand or whatever that they're giving you, because I mean, it's more freedom, but it also means that you need to do more. You need to do your research,
Yeah, of
that
course.
because they're not regulated. So
Yeah, of course. Well, and so, a word about training. I mean, these people are just as well trained. A lot of them have trained at US medical schools in many cases, but the quality of the machinery, everything from MRIs to, dental chairs and instrumentation, all of this stuff is really on par with at the private level, right? If you're getting private care, it's certainly on par with anything people are seeing in a US clinic.
yeah. And another thing that's pretty cool too is that whenever you do any of these studies, exams or whatever, they actually give it to you. And then so you like that's something that's different from the U.S. Is that uh, I'm only familiar with the U.S., so that's what I'm talking about these. But when you do an exam or something like that, they keep it behind this wall, and all the doctors can see everything. You don't even
That's
a
a
lot of
big
times
deal to get your own records. Yeah,
yeah. So
exactly.
you have it. I mean, I probably have it right back there. You have all your X-rays and MRIs or whatever. You can look at it yourself. You
Yeah.
have a CD,
Yep.
and you can keep it. You can download it, and so anyways, you have access to all that.
Yeah. No, it's a big convenience, and yeah, it's a big difference. You think about just trying to get hold of your medical records and all you got to sign like 12 forms to get your own records, right? Because of privacy laws or something like this. I mean, I suppose I'm jaded too, James, because I worked in medicine. I had a career in medicine. I used to teach doctors. I made an effort to try to also franchise acupuncture clinics. I still keep an active license in Colorado to practice. And so I know from working inside the system just how gummed up the entire thing is inside the US. And it seems to me that it's beyond repair. So, whether it's medical tourism or getting an executive checkup or going south of the border to get these things done, it just makes infinite sense to me. The birds are so loud on the recording, I have to get rid of them. It just makes infinite sense to me to let people know about this. What is the best way? I want to also ask you about why Mexico? Like, why did you decide to settle there? I know you're a super expert at this. What are you seeing in terms of trends of people coming out of North America? Because that's kind of my audience here. What do you see about the decision to come to Mexico? We know it's the #1 destination. So what are some reasons why? And like, what do you see in terms of the exodus out of North America?
Yeah, since I've gone international, I've been working with helping people move internationally and all that kind of stuff for a while now. I would say that despite what anybody says, the #1 reason is money, right? They come down because they can just live a better life. A lot of people, maybe they don't have a lot of money. But people come down to Mexico mostly to retire, Um, and they could just live a life on Social Security, their pension or whatever that they couldn't dream of in the States. I mean, they can go out to eat every night. They have,
What is your
they're
cost savings? Like how much does your cost of living go down? Because I tell people, I write
yeah.
about this, but what are you looking
Yeah, I
for?
would say I used to. I haven't done an analysis in quite a while, but I used to do this stuff quite a lot. But I would say probably in rent, maybe like a third the price.
Yeah.
And overall expenses, so food is way less. I don't know exactly how much, but maybe half or
Yeah,
something like that.
Mexico's insanely cheap for the quality of life that you get, right? For North
Yeah.
Americans, it's a massive either step up in your lifestyle or just a massive cost reduction. And
Yeah.
obviously, Mexican lifestyle is it's comparable in a lot of ways. There's a lot of big box stores, people who, miss the shopping in North America, right? Certainly in certain parts of Mexico, like uh Riviera Maya area. Obviously, there's a lot of very big, obvious presence of U.S. kind of chain stores and
Yeah.
restaurants and things like this. So,
Yeah, we
uh,
got Costco and Home Depot and Amazon and all that shit. It's not that far away. You have to take like, well, from where I'm at, it's like an hour drive to get any of that stuff. But yeah, most of the larger cities, I'm kind of in a small pueblo. It's like 100,000 people,
nice.
but like an hour away, and you can get all that whatever you want.
Yep.
And again, you got Amazon, you can order whatever you want from the States, and they have delivery services. So really you have access to whatever you want.
Yeah, it's a fantastic lifestyle in
Yeah.
Mexico. It really is. Yeah.
And so, yeah, I would say a lot of people, also, depending on where you want to live, for the most part, in a lot of places in Latin America, Europe, it's not as it's more walkable friendly. So a
Yep.
lot of people will just not have a car, which
Right.
obviously that makes it a lot easier. Or maybe you have a car, but you just buy it cash, and it's I sell property insurance also. It's just not a big of a business, but car insurance, house insurance, stuff like that. And car insurance, you're looking at like I don't know, like 100, $200 a year, something like that. Okay,
Right.
so you have a
Right.
car, you just have it there, and gas is cheap. Maybe but you don't have to use it that much. Everything's closer. Public transportation is inexpensive. A taxi and Uber is extremely inexpensive.
Yep.
Most places are just easier to walk around, so that's going to save you a lot of time and hassle. A lot of people, I've had my friends are like they come down to Latin America, like I'm never buying a car again.
Right. Yeah.
So,
No, the simplicity of the lifestyle almost anywhere in Mexico, but like you say, especially if you're in a big, a nice size, decent size urban center like Allende, Mexico City too, very, very livable city. We're headed down there. I was shocked. I first went there. We stayed in Polanco and that area around the park. Just magnificent. And I would say roughly a 50% reduction in cost of living even in a big city like that. Certainly you couldn't, in New York, you'd be paying, $7,000 to $10,000 for the kind of apartment that we stayed in. It was absolutely dirt cheap, and you're not really sacrificing much in terms of quality of life and access to various, whether it's schools or entertainment, cultural kinds of things. Mexico's super rich in all those areas. So I'm a big fan. We bought a property in Tulum. I probably won't live there, but I'm hoping it will turn into a good rental property as that area continues to develop. But there's a lot of other good things happening in Mexico. You're aware of this railway that they're making a deep water port in Salina Cruz that will cut across and I guess take market share from the Panama Canal, which is out of water. Apparently, there's a big drought in Panama, and they're really suffering. Are you aware of this infrastructure project going on, or any others like it?
oh yeah, no, definitely I am, and I mean that's actually not going to affect me much, from where I am presently. But it'll be interesting. I mean, I know that they opened it, and so I'll probably we'll check it out. Maybe we can use it for some tourism stuff. They also just opened up a highway from Oaxaca City to Puerto Escondido. It's
Oh,
about
wow.
3 hours instead of because before it was a really
Too long. Yeah.
yeah, too long, weird road. But now they have a highway that just goes straight there, so that's kind of interesting too.
Yep.
Um, yeah, lots of stuff going on. They're really trying to expand Mexico. We'll see. I mean, I think that as far as the macro picture of what's going on, um, there's a lot of stuff going on with Mexico and the United States. Just last year, just came out that Mexico has just overtaken China as far as imports into the United States are coming from Mexico rather than China, because they're trying to do this nearshoring, friendshoring
Nearshoring.
type of
Yeah, yeah.
thing.
Yep.
One thing I will say about that is that that's because, not because strictly, but it's also because a lot of Chinese are coming to Mexico and opening up the
Right.
manufacturing places. So
Interesting.
yeah, but there's a lot of things going on. I think that we're going to have a really crazy year. We got two big elections coming up in the United States and Mexico, and several throughout Europe. So,
What does that look like? What are people talking about the election in Mexico? We won't get into the U.S. election. It's
yeah,
everybody knows that's going to be crazy. But
yeah.
what does the future look like for Mexico? It's AMLO's finished, right?
Amo is finished, but he has his runner-up, Claudia Scheinbaum is her name. She's a Jewish woman, which is kind of weird for a Catholic country, and she'll be the first woman, and she'd be the first Jewish person, and is Morena is seen as kind of the left-wing party, and that's I'll it's kind of interesting. It's complicated because although you know AMLO, or the president of Mexico, when he was first elected, he's seen as kind of like the Bernie Sanders, and you'd be like, oh no, he can do all this stuff, but it's a populist left wing that's a little bit different than you might be used to or what you think of in the United States. So, the government of Mexico is very dependent on Pemex, which is the oil company here. A lot of the revenue comes from there, and so they can't do any of the, like, if they do anything and it's nationalized, so they can't do any of the crazy like energy stuff that's been going on in Europe, or some of the United States, and I suppose in Canada, but because that would just kill the government. So although he's like a left wing guy, it's still very friendly with
Yeah.
uh, fossil fuels. They're not trying to push electric cars on people and all that kind of stuff. You could still buy like brand new cars, manual, like big trucks and stuff like that here, which are harder and harder to get in the United States. There's actually a lot of like nice trucks you can get here that you can't even get in the United States. Like
That's
they
right.
don't
That's right.
manufacture it. So
Yeah,
anyways, yeah,
just a lot of the dumb ideas in general don't make
yeah,
it south. They really don't, whether it's, the woke ideology or any kind of political correctness. I find Mexico really refreshing because you don't find it. You can't find it anywhere. It's not represented. You don't see anybody who's really radicalized down that path. And obviously the government too understands that, their wagon is hitched to the fossil fuel
yeah,
industry. That's probably a good thing, right? Again, as you see, the political pressure to shut down traditional sources of energy in the US. Obviously, anybody who's in that industry understands this is a catastrophe.
yeah,
But
suicidal.
yeah, no, the fantasy that somehow everything's going to be powered by, renewable wind and solar is just that. It's a fantasy. And so we're going to have to unlearn that in real pain, probably in the US. But again, like Mexico is this beacon I mean, who would think that we would say this in our lifetime? But Mexico is a kind of beacon of hope for people who want to live like a peaceful, simple, high quality life in a place where you're not going to be hassled by a lot of that shit. So bravo, Viva Mexico.
Yeah, and I also say, yeah. So you mentioned a little bit about woke ideology. So even though Bernie is, I'm sorry, AMLO is seen as this Bernie or left wing figure, um, he's socially pretty conservative. I mean, even the left wing people in Mexico are not like huge proponents of abortion, and they're more like for family values and stuff. So,
That's
so
right.
like,
Right.
AMLO made a speech not too long ago where they were, because he's been going back and forth with the U.S. about this fentanyl problem, where he's trying to downplay Mexico's role in fentanyl, and what he was saying is, well, that the United States maybe they need to concentrate more on getting their families together, and having
Man.
their young people employed, and having families and stuff like that. Which is kind of funny. It's that's a like a conservative argument, right?
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah. So
It's
anyway,
also
so yeah,
sane.
yeah, right,
Right. It's also just
yeah,
good idea. It's like good
mhm,
advice. So
yeah.
Yeah, well, we're gonna see how a very chaotic decade plays out. But like you, I'm very happy I have a toehold in Mexico, and maybe that's a good place for us to wrap up. To me, the future of Mexico looks very, very bright. The Train Maya, the new airport in Tulum. There's just been tremendous development. You know, Mexico did not shut down during the whole lockdowns. It was a really livable place to be. So we really enjoyed ourselves there, and I appreciate you coming on and your expertise on global medical coverage. You know, you're the go-to guy in this space. So how do people get a hold of you? Obviously, I'll put it in the show notes, but you want to just let people know where to find you real quick?
Yeah, I appreciate that. So yeah, it's jamesguzman.com. My name, James, last name Guzman.com. That's where I've got the stuff now. And so people can check that out. If people want to go to I used to have a podcast. I'm really not doing it that much anymore. I might put this on the feed if you allow me to.
Please
But
do.
yeah, and yeah. So if people are interested in all I have 120 episodes on there. That's all different countries, all about international living and stuff. So people might find that interesting. All free, obviously. And so, yeah, so I'd be happy to just let me know, if you'd like to book a call, you can do that at jamesguzman.com or email me at jamesguzman.com. Let me know that you heard about it through this podcast. And yeah, thanks for having me on, and I'd be happy to talk to you.
You're very welcome.
Again.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Yep. Excellent. Good talking to you, James. It was good to reconnect.
All right. Sounds good.
All the best, my friend. Take care.
Yeah, same to you. Talk to you later.
That's it, everybody. Thanks so much. See you next time.